Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews. Adam Interviews. One day I'll get it right. And we are interviewing people doing exceptional things in our area, making an impact. And today we are joined by the Pittsford Central School District new superintendent, Shana Cutaia. Shana, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you come into the district having been in the district for some time. I know you were at Barker Road as a social studies teacher, I believe. Then you made your way to Brighton, which we'll forgive you for, being a Pittsford grad myself, but you made your way back. Is this day one for you?
This is day one.
All right, so how'd it go?
It was good. It was a whirlwind and lots of well-wishers and a lot of anticipation on my end for this day. So it's been going great so far.
You know, when you started, the district has been lucky to have a superintendent for a long time. I obviously, like most things, stability is a good thing for a district. Mike Pirro has retired. What is it like to fill his shoes?
It's daunting. I've worked with Mike my entire career in education, so over 20 years, and I look up to him and have counted him as a mentor and colleague over time. So it's big shoes to fill, and I just feel lucky that I've been able to learn alongside him for so many years to prepare me.
Absolutely. So while I'm well acquainted with your academic career, I actually don't know, prior to 2003, are you from the area? And then when you talk about that, maybe mix in how education became part of your life when you realized you were going to be an educator.
Yeah, so I'm actually a Red Raider. I grew up in Fairport, and my mother was an educator, my aunt, my grandmother. So I think one of the first things I ever said I wanted to do from a very young age was to be a teacher. And so my mom used to bring me into her classroom when I had a snow day and she didn't, or I had the day off and she didn't, and would let me run little lessons. And it's just something that I've always known that I wanted to do. And so I went to Nazareth College. I'm a NAS grad and got my master's from St. John Fisher initially, and began teaching right here in Pittsford, and was lucky. At that time, it was really difficult to get teaching jobs. And I was lucky to be able to come into Pittsford as a new teacher and learn from some of the very best.
Yeah, absolutely. And social studies, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm. Yes.
What made you gravitate towards that subject?
You know what it was a few really important teachers over time. I actually was between social studies and math, but I had some teachers, one 8th grade teacher in Fairport that I had, and then a professor at Nazareth who just really impacted me and my love of history and learning through storytelling. And that it just drew me into wanting to give some of those experiences to my students as well.
Yeah, no, for me, that's I love English. English didn't love me. Social studies was my main one. So I love that. And then you gravitated then towards administration. That's tough, right? I mean, you have to go get your master's, you have to get a different degree. There's a whole set of issues that you have to deal with that you didn't before, and you lose your big summers off. So why make that sacrifice?
I just have always been someone who wanted to be on the helping end of things. And so the more I worked into my teacher leadership roles early on, actually my assistant principal at the time, Mike Pirro, just had kind of tapped me to say, you know, that leadership might be something that I'd be interested in. Both, again, my mother and my aunt were administrators in the Rochester City School District. So I kind of had a view as I grew up on the impact that administrators could have. And I think once being in the classroom, wanting to be able to remove barriers for my colleagues and be able to support them in ways that I felt could help them do their jobs better. And then I think the more I got into it, I realized really the impact and the relationship I could still have with students and their families as I was doing that work is what's really kind of driven me along in my administrative career.
I think that relationship certainly can be fostered, especially with the right mindset from an administrator, vice principal, or principal in a school. When you moved to central office, did that become more difficult for you?
It's definitely, it's different. There's something about being a principal that I think is just a little bit of magic, where every kid in the building knows you, and you can really work with families over time to help them through some pretty significant challenges. And you also get to see them through great joys and accomplishments. So that piece was a bit of a challenge and a change for me. But I found that through my work in student services, I was able to be creative and work with buildings on a bigger level to be able to help with really some of the most significant needs that we've seen out there. And so I feel like I've had fewer uh, relationships with families, but perhaps they've been more impactful.
Hmm.
And so now I really see that those relationships are so important. And I get the opportunity now. I have children in the district, so just being on the sidelines of games and being at the musicals and the plays, and I get to just have those relationships with lots of families. It just looks a little bit different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you take this job, you speak about the needs, and the needs are great. I mean, they're different than when we were growing up. Technology is huge. Social media, more and more studies coming out showing that it can have a detrimental impact. We're seeing some countries take steps to ban it for kids under a certain age. How do you handle something like that?
I think, honestly, this cell phone, the bell to bell ban in schools has had such a significant positive impact that we've already seen. I mean, we don't have a ton of data, only being a few months in, but what we see anecdotally in our schools of kids having their chins up and looking at you in the hallway and responding to you and asking you how your day is, seeing them in the commons in our high schools talking to each other. The volume is actually elevated because they're talking. They want to play cards together. They want to talk to their teachers and their administrators and their security guards. And when we talk to kids, we have a superintendent's advisory council. And while it's not something they probably would have chosen, and they will admit that, and they wish that there were times that they could just pick up the phone, their own phone, and use it when they need to, they are really even recognizing the positive impact that it's having in their relationships with each other and with their teachers. And so their ability to just focus and do work because they're not distracted is really significant. So the positives of that is huge. It really makes our jobs better and easier, and it allows us to focus on things with kids using technology in different ways, because there are some great things out there like artificial intelligence that we're trying to really harness and let kids know how to use in appropriate ways. So it's definitely a different landscape, but we're seeing even the outside influence of social media lessening in our schools so far this year, because I think that's one of the biggest pieces is it's no longer what happens outside of school stays outside. There is an impact on students' ability to learn when negative things in terms of technology or bullying or harassment that are happening on social media, they do work their way into the school day. And so we've seen that lessening so far this year. So we're hoping that that will continue.
Yeah. As I told Mike when I interviewed him a month or two ago, I think this is one of those things that we're going to look back on it like the smoking ban in restaurants and bars and say, how did we even let this happen in the first place? My 14-year-old son, who's a freshman at Sutherland, I think would disagree with me, but here we are. And when it comes to the implementation, all different school districts took a different tact. Greece obviously is perhaps the most, I don't know what the right step would be, the most what would be impactful or the most serious about it, if you will, not to say that's better or worse. And they have scanners. I mean, is that something that we could eventually see in the Pittsford Central School District?
I think we're open to being flexible over time based on what we see as the need. So right now we are astounded with how well our students are doing. And I think we were all surprised early on that they really are just following our expectations. Here in Pittsford, our expectation is that students lock them in their lockers, and we know that that's not always what they're doing, and they may have them in their backpacks, but they are not using them. And as we just monitor that over time, we're giving them little booster shot reminders here and there to remember not to use them, but we're not seeing, blatant, student misuse of phones in schools. So if that were to happen, we would have to adjust. And as we're talking to kids, we know we took it a little bit of a step further. So we also, the law says that the cell phones cannot be used throughout the day. We also removed use of the AirPods or wearables, so including their smartwatches, things of that nature, and their own personal devices. So they're only allowed to use their school issued laptop. So we're gathering feedback from students, and it's actually caused us to do a one-to-one device survey for all of our students and families, because we want to make sure they can access everything they need, and that it's also equitable so that everyone has the same device and the same tools. and that some families aren't having to provide something different. So that's been a learning curve for us and a big change for our students.
Yeah, very interesting. One idea I had, now that I have you on the phone here, getting like a little pocket radio, because I know kids like to listen to music after
Yeah,
school or whatnot. I mean, is that going to be acceptable? Because then you don't have cell reception?
absolutely. And even on their laptops, they can listen to music with a hardwired
Hmm.
headphone. They don't love that, but there are ways around it. It just might not be the ways that they like. We had a student bring in an actual disc man. I don't know where they dug it up from, but we said, great, a disc man with wired headphones, go for it.
Shana, I'm not going to lie. I went on eBay looking for that. I was like, why not? You know,
Yeah.
um, we're going old school here. Keeping with technology here, Chat GPT. I mean, that's tough. Yeah, I have even some of my colleagues here who are on the younger side. They say, why would I? You know, if this is help, this is just an aid. And I just worry, you know, being gray in the hair now, that there's going to be some learning loss because they don't do the elemental stuff, the building blocks moving up. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think we've gone from, oh my gosh, how do we stop this and keep it from our students to how do we harness its power and help our students learn to harness the power of artificial intelligence in a way that amplifies their thinking. So they're the builder of the knowledge, and the artificial intelligence is the thinking partner. So, they certainly could use it to try and write something, an email, a paper. We have some tools to be able to help with that, but we spent our superintendent's day this fall on teaching our teachers about artificial intelligence, just so that we all have an understanding of how we can use it, how students can use it, what we absolutely should never use it for, like personally identifiable information or putting things in it, and what, bias or other things may be negative effects of artificial intelligence. But I think if we try to run away from it, much like with social media, it will very quickly overpower us. So I think we really have to look at it deeply and talk to our students about it, and hopefully help them to use it for things like study tools and aids, and understanding how to write excellent prompts that will help them think deeper about whatever it is that they're working on, and not replace their thinking.
Absolutely. No, I agree. By the way, the word I was looking for when I was talking about Greece's policy was aggressive or expansive. That was
Okay.
bothering me. So that's what I needed to step in and say that. All right. So there are priorities that every school district has to make, especially when it comes to extracurricular activities. You know, where do you see that when it comes to the clubs, sports, all of that stuff? I mean, there's only so much treasure in the chest.
Yeah, I think as students' needs and their desires change over time, we have to respond to that. So we are very lucky to live in a community where our community members, our parents, have a high expectation for what our students are going to be able to engage in, and we want to be able to provide everything that we can for our students without overwhelming them. I know I happen to be a parent of at least one kiddo who wants to do all of the things, and so we need to be able to help our students to make those decisions, and we have to be fiscally responsible with what we're offering to our families. And in the way of extracurriculars, we've always let our students' needs and wants drive those decisions. So all of our clubs in the district are student led. So there's a process for students to request new clubs, and we approve many of those throughout the year. But then there's times when some of those clubs come off, and we have a process for evaluating those every year. And so if we really don't have as much student population in one, we may remove something to be able to continue to offer such a robust catalog of things. But as our students, also with athletics, as you know, we have a lot of students who are highly competitive, and especially at the modified level, we want to be able to offer experiences for students to get started in something, and not that they've had to play since they were at a very young age to even have the opportunity to play at school. So we look to outside sources to be able to help with funding. I think that's one of the things that is one of the bigger stressors here in Pittsford that people don't always automatically think, is that our state funding is quite minimal compared to local districts, and so we really have to go to our taxpayers, which of course we're capped in being able to do. So we're trying to be really creative with our own funding, and also with areas like our PTSA. and our Pittsford Education Foundation to be able to support additional needs so that we can offer our kids as much as possible.
Yeah, and look, full disclosure, my mom, as many of the viewers know, was a principal in the district, so I'm a little more well-versed on the comings and goings of Pittsford. And, you know, I think one of the misrepresentations is that it's an affluent community, and so everybody's rich in the district. And so two things come from that. One, as you already noted, the state funding isn't necessarily there, and so parents, when they're asked, they're like, how do you not have this? And because of the way the state finances are structured, it's harder in some respects for the school district to raise money. So there's some surprise in the community there. And two, there's a very, unfortunately, like any district, there's a large portion of the population that is not affluent. And I think that should not get overlooked.
100%. And we want students, again, to have an equitable experience where if they haven't had the opportunity to be able to play anything from baseball or volleyball or lacrosse from when they were 5 years old, we want them to be able to learn here at school and still have those experiences and grow their talents. And so we do have to step in with some of those other resources to be able to help us help our families directly.
Now you're taking the wheel at a very interesting time. The education department at the federal level, it looks like it's being dismantled or shrunken at the very least. How does that affect a district like yours?
So I think what we've tried to do, and again, we don't get a lot of state funding. Right now, our entitlement grants, so things like our title grants and our special education funds, have not been impacted. And I think in the state of New York, we have been able to kind of lean on the state education department to help guide us in terms of what are things that are out there that are rumors and things that are said to be true versus what are the actual laws that we need to be following, and are there things that we need to be changing internally. And so it's been an interesting time, and there's been a lot of just distractions out there with trying to figure out what the laws are things changing, and we really just lean heavily on our own legal supports and the state education department to help guide us.
The other point on that, and then we'll move on from the federal stuff, is just the goals of the district, the values of the district. You know, a few years ago, there was talk of diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation and things like that. Does that change in the district in the coming year or two?
I would just say, if anything, our district is more diverse than ever. And so our priority has been and will continue to be for all of our students and their families to feel that they're seen and valued and safe in our school community. And so that's really what those words mean to me, is that everyone, when they walk through our doors, has the right to see themselves in those around them and to know that they're valued for exactly who they are when they enter our schools.
Clearly, these school districts don't operate in a silo. There's very close relationships between the superintendents in our area. Doing the Golden Apple, I kind of figured that out early on. You know, you'd have the Hilton superintendent be the leader of the superintendent's group. There's a lot of communication. Where do you think that goes from here? What do you think your role will look like in the community-wide education conversation?
That group of the Monroe County superintendents has been so supportive. My phone was full of text messages today of just congratulations and support. So meeting with that group monthly has been wonderful, and just knowing that there are others that are in the same boat and having the same struggles. And our local BOCES really brings us all together and helps us to really use our resources across districts in more efficient ways. So I see myself really leaning on that group and bringing, whatever questions and skills and anything that I can to help represent Pittsford, but also really be curious about what's happening in other districts that we can learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be challenging, the fleet. I know the goalpost keeps getting moved with the electric buses. That's going to be a challenge, I think, for any district.
It is, yeah. We're unclear of where that goalpost is going, but I think it's important for us at least to be good neighbors and to begin bringing things like charging stations to fruition, and to bring those things to our taxpayers and let them understand what we're obligated to be doing and to start moving in that direction. But we also know that even our utilities are not prepared for that amount of energy on our grid. So we're all working together, and trying to do the best we can to understand what we can do to bring down some of the impact on our environment, and to go as close to zero emissions as we can. But we know that that's probably going to be more of a marathon than a sprint.
Meanwhile, in the bus realm, the shortages, it hit almost every district. Pittsford was not unique in that regard. Has that eased at all over the last year? The bus driver shortage, I should say.
Yeah, we're seeing some easing of it. We're still well understaffed in terms of drivers. So if anybody's interested in driving and having a great impact on students on their way to and from school, we're hiring.
There you go.
And I think, like most districts, we've taken a really hard look at our routes and making sure that we're being really efficient. And that's hard. Sometimes it means being on the bus longer for students. Sometimes their experiences are changing, where everyone doesn't have a seat to themselves. But we're really trying to be responsible and getting every student to school and to meet our obligation to get all of our students outside of the district that need transportation to other placements or private schools. And it's not easy to do, but our transportation department has done a wonderful job, and we're really looking at how we can continue to improve over time.
I can't remember. Obviously, East Rochester, it's a walking district. Are there any districts that say if you live within a certain distance to a school, you have to walk? And is that something that Pittsford would ever consider?
Yeah, so New York state law actually determines the walking distance. And so I think, like most districts, we used to pull way back on that and make it shorter, and we've had to get right up until that limit. So students are walking if they are close enough to school, but we do provide transportation for all of the students that are beyond that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And obviously the accessibility issues and things like that are taken care
Right.
of as well. So this next question I've been asked, and I actually don't love it because it's very hard. It's harder than people think, but it's still an important question. So I'm going to ask you for one of the more challenging experiences in your career, and then one of the more positive. And because we often don't think about that stuff, you know, it's sometimes hard to recall that in the moment. But if we could, why don't we start with a positive, something that stands out to you when you think this was a very memorable experience for me and kind of maybe even reinforced my decision to get an education?
I'm actually thinking of an experience with a family that really impacted me. And it was probably one of my most challenging experiences as well, because I learned so much. But I think one of the experiences with a family really behind closed doors, dealing with some really sensitive information around race and how a child was being treated in the school. And through sitting down and really being curious with that family, and them really opening up and being really vulnerable with me, it really changed the way that I saw the entire situation, and the way that I chose to just do more learning for myself over time, to be able to understand implicit bias, and to be able to really understand what happens in some of those subtle times when students are not treated the way that they're supposed to be treated, and what we could do to help change the culture around us and the culture in the building at the time, to be able to make an impact on more students. So I don't know if that was my challenging one.
I think it might, like you noted, it's kind of both in a way,
rewarding,
I suppose.
But I guess maybe that's more the challenging situation, because it was emotional, and it was really hard, but it probably produced the most growth in myself, just being able to admit when maybe you didn't see things the way that you initially did, or just learning through mistakes and through curiosity.
Yeah. Look, I think those in our personal life and professional life, I think having our fundamentals challenged. I've always said, it's in high school, our teachers tell us something and we say, okay, got it. We're all listening. And in college, we question a little bit more, but we still kind of ingest, we're malleable. And then we get out of college and suddenly we know everything. And we're like a fixed product. I don't fully understand why that happens. And I've tried to fight it myself over the years. So I give you a lot of credit for kind of looking at that and kind of opening yourself up to a different thought process.
It's very freeing when you realize you don't know everything about something, and that really the act of just being curious, I think, has helped me in so many different situations to, know that I don't have to have all the answers going into a situation.
Yeah, and I think that will help you in your tenure because you're going to have a lot of people giving input and yeah, no, very good. All right, so I will hit you for a positive, just one of those really light moments. Maybe it was a graduation or something like that. If there's anything that comes to mind where you're like, this is everything that, that I saw coming in education, just distilled into one moment.
Everything in one moment. I would say, in my role in student services, we were able to create a district tutoring center. So our students who aren't able to be in their school building for a variety of reasons, could be behavioral, could be mental health reasons, could be transitioning from another program. And so being able to work closely with students, particularly as they near graduation, and just knowing everything that they've struggled with. And I'm thinking of one student in particular at graduation last year, and watching the student walk up the ramp and watching them look up at the screen and see their face, and just knowing everything that so many people had put into that moment was just makes you want to burst with pride.
Yeah, it really does. It's cliche at this point because it's been said so many times, but they ask people, name the 3 economists that won the Nobel Prize, and barely anybody can, but name your top 3 teachers and everybody can. It just goes to show the impact that you and everyone else can have, and I think that moment showed you that child's life was changed forever based on that help. So their path could have gone in one direction. So, all right, I've got like 1 minute left. I wish we could keep talking, but so any type of motto that you live by that you might express to I always find that administrators just have that one thing or 2 things that they love to say to students, and sometimes it sticks. I was just wondering if you have one of those.
I would say something my mentor, Mike Pirro, said to me the very first day when I filled in for him. Actually, he was the principal at Barker Road, and I was still getting my administrative degree. And he said, there's nothing that can happen in this school building today that we as a community cannot handle. And it meant something to me at that time, and it means much more to me now. And I really believe that to be true.
Oh boy. Well, that motto was tested over the last 5 years, to be sure.
It's true.
So, I wish you all the luck in the world. I'm so happy that sometimes we pull people in from outer space with these international searches that they do, and it's nice to know that we got a homegrown product coming in, and we're wishing you the best.
Well, thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the support.
All right. Shana Cutaia, the new superintendent for the Pittsford Central School District, joining a group of wonderful superintendents that we already have in our area. So thank you to Shana and the entire team over in Pittsford for her first day. Very exciting. And by the way, stay with the Rochester First streaming app if you want to continue watching this series and so much more. Weather every day, in-depth talk about that. And I think we've got Bills Kickoff Live tonight as well, so stay tuned for Thad and the team talking about the incredible win against the Steelers. All right, everyone, take care. Talk soon.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.